Florida man arrested for voter fraud says it was all a setup. DeSantis has launched this ridiculous campaign that criminalizes individuals like him. Let's go ahead and put up the picture. I will give you background. You are going to be upset. 2 black men in Florida said they received a voter registration card from the state before being arrested for voting illegally. They got a voter registration card from the state and then got arrested for voting illegally. A Miami man is facing years. All right. So Ronald Lee Miller, that's who you're looking at. Ronald Lee Miller is facing 5 years in jail for voter fraud and says he was under the impression that his rights were restored because he received a voter ID card, which would be a common connection. Nothing abnormal about his belief. Miller, who has been incarcerated for murder, said he registered to vote after a campaigner at a supermarket told him he was in fact eligible in 2020 and encouraged him to fill out the form. There's more. However, in mid-August, Miller was awakened in the wee hours of the morning by a barrage of armed cops. Miller was one of 20 people in Florida rounded up by Governor Ron DeSantis. This was his election crimes and security task force for election fraud, registering to vote with past convictions. My house was surrounded by 50 U.S. Marshals, he said. You do me like that? Question mark. For a card? Question mark. With a murder conviction, the only way Miller could get his voting rights restored is to file an application with the state's clemency board, only if it has been 10 years since he completed his sentence, probation or parole. Now, they typically do not tell individuals who are released what qualifies and what does not. As a matter of fact, there are many crimes that you could commit in Florida and still be able to vote. If you go north a little bit to Georgia, you can be a convicted murderer, not have to go through any restoration process, and you can actually just vote once you finish your sentence and all probation, parole, and fees, restitution, etc. are paid. No restoration needed. Only when there's a crime of moral turpitude, which murder does not qualify, ironically, that is when you have to go through a restoration process in other states. But once again, this is state to state and the laws change frequently. So he was told by someone he believed to be an expert that no, he actually is eligible. So he registered. He registers and the state says, hey, guess what? You're eligible. We're going to send you this card. Then he goes to vote. The person that accepts it says, you're eligible. They accept the vote. He's happy. He's a productive citizen again. He served his time. He did something wrong. He served his time. He voted. He gets arrested. Let's put up the other young man, Robert Simpson of Pahokee, a city on the shore of Lake Okeechobee, served time for murder 30 years ago. Simpson said he also thought his rights were restored. He filled out a voter registration form. He also received a voter ID card. Miller said he received a letter last month after the fact informing him that he was ineligible to vote. Now, let me give you some background to this task force that has been created, because I hope you know what this is really about. This is about intimidation. This is about making people afraid, especially people of color. This is about Ron DeSantis utilizing policy and legislative protocol in order to retain, obtain, and maintain power. That's all this is. It's nothing more. Because if they really cared about who voted based on their background, what they would do is have a protocol that would red flag anyone who in fact did not qualify. They don't have that. That doesn't exist. So what they do is they allow individuals to register. The state will approve them, give them the registration card. They will then be accepted at the local board of elections based on that card. They are allowed to vote. And then at some point they check the system and they say, here are the people we're going to arrest now. They could check the system before it even gets to that point. They choose not to. So they could do things like this to citizens in Florida. June 2019, the governor signed a bill. He signed this bill into law blocking formerly incarcerated people from automatically getting their rights restored unless they pay off all their court fees, restitutions, and other legal obligations. That was one dynamic. Governor DeSantis signed the bill creating the Office of Election Crimes and Security in April. That was the next step, which is tasked with investigating all election crimes in Florida and overseeing the implementation of measures that will ensure Florida's election remains secure. While DeSantis has put the blame on local election supervisors, officials say there is no statewide system that sufficiently flags someone ineligible to vote. Well, yes, they do. They do have a statewide system. It's after they vote. That's the statewide system. So after they vote, they have a statewide system in place in order to find individuals like we just highlighted. Now, remember, there's noted voter fraud from individuals who support Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, one person who is an attorney in Florida, created a scheme in Georgia and is being prosecuted by Georgia, but not prosecuted by Florida, even though Florida has jurisdiction to do so. This was done in spite of a ballot initiative back in 2018. Let me explain that. The governor has shown some resistance to voting rights restoration during his one term as Florida governor. While Florida voters took to the polls and selected him as their next governor by a tight margin in November 2018, 65% also voted to approve a constitutional amendment that automatically restored voting rights to citizens with past convictions, excluding murder and serious sex crimes. All right, so that's what they're doing now with taxpayer money. They could do it more efficiently. They could stop this madness. They choose not to. They're trying to make an example out of people and strike fear in the hearts of others. My dear brother, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, there's so many things you touched on. One thing from the financial standpoint, how much does it cost for 50 marshals to arrest one man over voter fraud? And how do you give someone a card? I mean, this is a setup from the start, right? They talk you into filling out this form. They send you a state card, makes you think you can vote. You go vote and you find out you can't vote. And I remember when Florida voted for people, ex-felons, ex-convicts, to be able to vote, and DeSantis created that restoration, financial restoration thing just to keep them from voting. So it's a setup. It's a total setup from the start. By the way, I don't know if it was a Freudian slip or a nickname, but when you called him Governor DeSantis, how is that not trending as the name he should have?
Yeah, it was definitely intentional, dear brother.